As we're continuing our series of messages from the book of James, we come to James chapter 5, verse 7. We ended up at the end of chapter 4 last week, but we dealt with the first part of chapter 5 in an earlier message. So that's why we're down to verse 7 today. I'm going to be reading verses 7 through 12. Therefore be patient, brethren, until the coming of the Lord. See how the farmer waits for the precious fruit of the earth, waiting patiently for it until it receives the early and latter rain. You also be patient. Establish your hearts, for the coming of the Lord is at hand. Do not grumble against one another, brethren, lest you be condemned. Behold, the judge is standing at the door. My brethren, take the prophets who spoke in the name of the Lord as an example of suffering and patience. Indeed, we count them blessed who endure. You have heard of the perseverance of Job and seen the end intended by the Lord, that the Lord is very compassionate and merciful. But above all, my brethren, do not swear either by heaven or by earth or with any other oath, but let your yes be yes and your no, no, lest you fall into judgment. Now, I'll confess that I struggled a little bit over exactly what to title this message and the direction to go with this particular passage. This passage deals with patience and perseverance in the face of suffering and trials, along with a few other things. But the truth that it points to for us to keep in mind in these situations that it mentions is the fact that the Lord is coming. The Lord is coming. It gives some instructions here in verses 7 and 8 and adds as a reason for it, for the coming of the Lord is at hand. Then it goes on and gives some warnings about things we shouldn't do and reminds us the judge is standing at the door. In other words, Christ is coming and he will judge. So I believe it is appropriate as we deal with this passage to focus on the subject of Christ's return and its implications for us that's brought out here. And so in line with our theme we've been following throughout the book of James, we've entitled this, Don't Deceive Yourself About the Second Coming. Don't deceive yourself about the second coming. Now there are a lot of ways that we can do that. A lot of ways we can deceive ourselves about the second coming of Christ. We can deceive ourselves in one of the ways that the Bible warns us against, thinking that it's been so long since Christ's first coming and his claim that he's going to come back that the world has continued on as usual, so we just conclude that it's not going to happen. Jesus isn't going to come back. So that's one deception we have to watch out for. The idea that Jesus isn't coming back, or maybe even that he'll eventually come back, but not anytime soon. It's not anything that we really have to be concerned about or prepare ourselves for. And then, of course, there can be all kinds of deceptions about the details of his coming. When and how it's all going to work out. For example, over the years, people have erroneously and presumptuously set dates for his coming, even though Jesus said that no one knows the day or the hour. People have made claims about his coming that aren't in line with biblical teaching. And people have come up with all kinds of wild interpretations about the events surrounding Jesus' coming. And so I just encourage you this morning to stick to the Bible and what it says. Know what it says about his coming and know what it doesn't say. Check things out in the Word. Don't just accept some popular teaching, no matter how widespread and accepted it may be. Or don't just accept the words of someone claiming to be a prophet and having some special word from God about the second coming. Look for yourself at what the Bible says about Jesus' return. But the main way this passage of Scripture in James encourages us not to deceive ourselves about the second coming has to do with two specific things. The first is in connection with the hardships and the trials we face in life. And really, both of them are related to that. But in verse 7, it starts with that word, therefore. And if you trace it back, it's pointing back to the previous verses where it's talking about the rich and about how they oppressed people. So as we move into verse 7, James is actually addressing the oppressed, the ones who suffer at the hands of the rich and of others. And he's saying, be patient, endure those hardships, persevere. Or, as the old poster pictured it that was so popular back when I was a kid, it showed the picture of a cat or a kitten dangling in the air while hanging on to something like a rope or the branch of a tree with its front paws. And the caption read, "Hang in there, baby." Do you remember that one? That's what James is advocating here. Hang in there. You may be going through tough times. People may be oppressing you. You may even be facing persecution because of your faith. But hang in there, baby. Keep holding on because Jesus is coming. But again, let's not get the wrong idea or deceive ourselves about that. It's not pointing to Jesus' return as our way to escape hard times. I mean, that's the way a lot of people view it today. They think Jesus is going to come back and take his faithful people out of this world so that they don't have to deal with some of the hard times and persecution, or so that they don't have to face the possibility of maybe having to put their lives on the line for Christ. But I don't believe the Bible promises that. It indicates that God's people may very well have to go through at least some of the trials and tribulations this world is going to suffer as Christ's return approaches. Followers of Christ may have to face persecution and may be forced to pay the ultimate price of giving their lives for the Lord. I mean, some people are facing that in our world right now. It's already happening. I don't believe we're guaranteed immunity from that possibility, and we certainly shouldn't be counting on it. The point here isn't that the Lord is coming back to spare you from the hard times. No, it's encouraging us to hang in there through whatever hard times we may have to face, because the Lord is coming, and when he does, he will reward those who have been faithful to endure those hardships and those tribulations and those persecutions. Hang in there now, it's saying, because your reward and blessing for doing so is coming when the Lord returns. And that fits in with the examples that it gives us here in verses 10 and 11. It points to the prophets, for one, as an example of suffering and patience. Those prophets spoke the word of the Lord. They were faithful, and many of them suffered as a consequence of it. People ridiculed them and often rejected their message. Some of them got thrown into prison, and others were even put to death because they spoke the truth and proclaimed God's word to people who didn't want to hear it. They didn't avoid suffering and hardship. They hung in there and they stayed faithful to God and fulfilled his purpose for them in spite of the tribulations they faced. And that's what the Lord calls us to do too. The other example that it gives us here is Job. And the Bible gives us quite a detailed account of Job's suffering. I mean, he was a godly man. Yet, what happened to him? He lost his possessions, he lost his family, and he lost his health. I mean, he pretty much lost everything, didn't he? And he didn't understand why. But he persevered. He was at the end of his rope, but kind of like the saying goes, he tied a knot in it and he hung on. In spite of his friends' accusations and discouragements, he hung on. He refused to curse God and turn his back on God as his wife suggested he do. He was determined to keep trusting God no matter what happened. He said even if God took his life. He hung in there. And in the end, God rewarded Job and blessed him and restored double of what he had previously lost. Job didn't avoid suffering. He went through hard times, but he endured until the end when the Lord showed him compassion and mercy and graciously blessed him. And that's what the Lord is calling us to do in light of his coming. Not to look at it as our way of escape, but to keep our eyes focused on its truth as we go through times of suffering and heartache and pain in this life. Keep being true to God. Keep being faithful to him. Keep trusting him no matter what, even if it means giving up your life. And know that in the end, the Lord is coming and you'll receive his well done, and you'll receive his reward for you, and you'll be blessed for having endured faithfully to the end. Have any of you planted a garden this year? My mom planted a few tomato plants recently. If you plant a garden, you keep waiting and watching for those plants to grow and then to bloom and then to bear the fruit or the crop that you can harvest from them. Well, James compares that to what we're talking about concerning Christ's coming. He says it's like a farmer waiting patiently for that fruit. And then in verse 8 he says, you also be patient. So like a farmer waiting for his crop, you keep watching and waiting for Christ's return and patiently endure whatever you have to until that time comes. And then you notice it adds, establish your hearts, for the coming of the Lord is at hand. In other words, don't back off now. Don't let the tribulations of this life move you away from your faith in the Lord. Don't let the stormy winds blow you off course now. Don't let the spiritual dryness of the times cause your soul to wither and to die. No, you hang in there. You establish your heart. You make sure to stay close to the Lord and keep your feet on solid ground, on stable ground, and keep drinking from that living water that will refresh your soul, even if the world around you is in a spiritual drought. You can still be fresh and flourishing and fruitful. So hang in there, no matter what, because the Lord is coming and he will reward you for your faithfulness. So that's one of the main messages here. Endure hardship and suffering. Hang in there because Jesus is coming back to reward those who faithfully do so. But the other main point that's made here in reference to Jesus' return is that he's coming as the one who will judge sin. He's coming as the one who will judge sin. Therefore, while we're waiting, and while we're going through some of those trials and tribulations, we need to be careful that we don't let ourselves fall into any actions or develop any attitudes for which we'll face his condemnation. Verse 9, for example, says, not to grumble against one another, lest you be condemned. And then it adds, behold, the judge is standing at the door. Jesus is coming. And he's coming back this time, not primarily to bring salvation, but to bring judgment. He's standing at the door. He's close by. He's about to enter the room. So you need to be ready and not do anything that would result in your receiving his condemnation. As a child, did you ever get into some kind of mischief? And if I stopped right there, I think we could all answer yes to that part. We all got into mischief at some point. No matter how good a child we may have been otherwise. I had a radio show on one evening recently when I was driving down the road in the car, and they were asking people to call in and tell people about some foolish thing they did when they were young or when they were kids. And no doubt we all have our stories we could tell about that. We've all done foolish things. But maybe you did something that you knew you shouldn't, and then you heard the approaching footsteps of mom or dad. And maybe panic set in at that point. You knew you were about to get caught. You were about to face judgment, the consequences for what you had done. And that's what this is reminding us. Jesus is coming back. His footsteps are drawing closer all the time. Our judge is standing at the door about to walk in on us. So don't do something you'll regret, especially as you deal with your hardships and your trials in life. As I said, it warns us here specifically about not grumbling against one another. When things get tough, it's easy to become a grumbler and complainer, isn't it? It's tempting to start lashing out at other people, to start beating ourselves up, and even to start blaming God for the difficulties that we're having to deal with. Even as I was preparing this message this week, my computer started acting up. It kept running slow and not wanting to boot up right. And I knew enough to be able to run a little diagnostic program on it, and it showed that my hard drive was failing. That's not a good thing. Now, I was tempted to start grumbling about it. And when you start feeling stressed over something like that, or over even worse difficulties that come up, you can start getting grouchy and grumpy with other people. And the Lord had to remind me to trust Him to take care of this and to help me do whatever I need to do and not to grumble or take it out on other people. And one of the reasons not to do that, and there are other reasons not to do it, but one of the reasons not to do it, as it says here, is lest you be condemned, because the judge is standing at the door. Similarly, in verse 12, it warns us to be people of our word, that we shouldn't have to swear oaths to back up whatever we say. Our yes should mean yes, and our no should mean no. People ought to be able to take our word for things. And it warns again about judgment if that's not the case. Again, the judge is standing at the door. Jesus' coming is something we can look forward to, and that we can welcome if we're ready to meet Him and if our hearts are right with Him. But if we're not ready, if there's unconfessed and unrepented sin in our lives that's condemning us, we need to get that straightened out with Him. And we need to quit doing those things. We need to be living like people who are ready to stand before the Lord our judge at any time. We need to be living the way we ought to live, knowing that our judge is standing at the door, ready to walk in on us. Are we doing anything that we would be ashamed of? Are we doing anything that we know would result in receiving His displeasure and His condemnation? We need to conduct ourselves in light of the fact that the footsteps of Jesus are drawing closer and closer all the time. His second coming is approaching. Our judge is standing at the door ready to walk in on us. Are we prepared for Him to do that? It's similar to how the Old Testament prophets spoke about what they referred to as the day of the Lord approaching. And people were looking forward to that event, looking at it as a time when God would come and save His people. But those prophets warned them that it was also going to be a day of judgment, and that many of them were deceiving themselves in looking forward to that day because they were actually going to receive condemnation and judgment rather than salvation and reward. And that's what we have to be careful of as we look ahead to Christ's return. It's going to be a wonderful time of the Lord coming to take His bride, the church, home to be with Him. But it's also going to be a time of judgment. And I'm afraid some are deceiving themselves about looking forward to Christ's coming when they aren't ready and will actually face His judgment. We as individuals need to be sure we're ready. And I'm not sure the Church of Christ as a whole, His bride, is ready and prepared as she ought to be. Christ is coming for a holy bride. He's coming for a bride that's described in Ephesians 5 as one who is glorious and not having spot or wrinkle or any such thing, it says, but that she should be holy and without blemish. I'm afraid the church is a far cry from that today in many ways. That scripture says Jesus gave His life for His bride, that He might sanctify and cleanse her with the washing of water by the word. And I'm afraid the church is forsaking His word and not letting the Lord cleanse and sanctify her today. So we each need to let the Lord cleanse us and sanctify us. And we need to be cleansed and sanctified as the body of Christ today so that we'll be ready when the Lord returns. So let's not deceive ourselves about the second coming, the coming of our Lord. Hard times are here. Hard times are coming. But we need to hang in there and be faithful, knowing that the Lord will come to reward those who stay true to Him. And we need to guard against letting those hard times in any way cause us to stray from the Lord or from living the way that He calls us to live. We need to be the holy people and the holy church He calls us to be. And if we let ourselves fall into the grumbling it talks about here and lose our love for God and others or in other ways not to follow Him and His will for us, we will be held accountable for it. Our judge is at the door, so we need to be ready to meet Him. Are you ready today? Are you ready if the judge were to open that door and show up today to hold you accountable? Well, let's do what it says here and establish our hearts. Let's make sure our hearts are firmly holding to the Lord and that we're following Him, because the coming of the Lord is at hand.